In the previous days, there was a massive protest against mass migration. And we have here several footage. You see people with Irish flags marching down the street.
Thousands there is, look at.
It's plenty of people. You see, you don't see any other flag. It's just Irish flags. There were some counter-protests. I think there was one from an NGO, something called Unity Against Racism, which didn't receive that much attention. And as you would expect, it was people trying to say that these demonstrations were entirely foreign funded.
Really?
Yes.
What, Russia?
It's Russia.
Russia's funding Irish nationalism. Who would have thought? Who would have thought?
It's an evil plan to destroy the EU, which it could make sense in some countries, but I don't think in Ireland. But I do think that one of the main things that people in this protest are saying is absolutely correct, is that a lot of the politicians are constantly talking about the EU's problems and foreign problems, and there's a question of, what about us? And I think that the same thing that happens in Ireland, the same question that arises in Ireland is a question that arises everywhere in the West, especially in Europe.
I always find Ireland a funny, not funny, funny, interesting example. Yeah. Because in England, or Britain rather, they always use the example that, it's colonialism, there's the stain of the Atlantic slave trade, it's payback in some way for colonialism. Well, Ireland never did any of that. It's like, so whatever country you're in, they say whatever, like in Sweden, they don't bother going with that. Or in the United States, it's all about 19th century slavery or something or other. But for Ireland, what actual reason is there to say, let's flood this country with foreign people?
I've heard two things about this. One, I hear some people who are saying that there were lots of Irish people involved in the British Empire, and therefore it's payback time because it's payback against the British Empire.
Oh, right, okay.
That's one argument and the other. But I think the other argument that does make sense is that it doesn't justify it. In fact, the exact opposite. But it explains that all this anti-colonialist narrative is just anti-West, and in many cases it's also anti-white and anti-European. So it doesn't matter what kind of colonial or colonialist past Ireland had or any other country had. Yeah. You're white Europeans, you're targeted by wokeness and by any kind of, let's say, cultural force that is against you.
And Ireland, of course, the Republic of Ireland, has got a long and storied narrative about their nationalism.
Yes.
So you can imagine if you were a globalist, you would look at Ireland, the Irish people, and say they're a people that need to be sort of stamped down because they've got a strong identity, a strong national identity. So that needs to go. Yeah. I can see why from like the globalist cabal perspective.
The cigar smoking.
Yeah, in some back room somewhere. Yeah, the Irish.
Yeah.
They're too big for their boots. They've got their own identity. We have to do something about that. Horrible, isn't it? Horrible. Yeah. Crazy.
Right, so here we have an independent article for those of you who want to read it. Thousands participate in Dublin anti-migration protests and counter-demonstration. And it says here, I think only 3 people were arrested, or at least that's what I read a few hours ago. I think that for a protest that size, which it's tens of thousands of people, you see people saying, it's 100, 106,000, it's 20,000, but it's tens of thousands.
Yeah, right.
It's a big protest.
At a glance, you can see it's thousands of people. Yeah.
Yes, exactly. And also, I think Ireland has a population of about 5.5 million people. So it's not exactly that it's 10,000 people in a country that has 200 million people. It's tens of thousands in a country with 5.5 million population.
I mean, that's relatively small. Right, it's less than the greater London metropolitan area. The whole of the Republic of Ireland is less than that. Yes. So it makes the population-wise, So it makes the crime being committed against them sort of more egregious in a way, or more. No, it's all the same on a moral level. It's all the same, but still, it's happening more quickly to them because it's a smaller, easier pocket of people to water down.
Exactly. And the thing is that we are constantly making segments about Ireland. I mean, every now and then. And the things that happen in Ireland are also things that happen here and throughout Europe, especially. So we're going to give you also wider context towards the latter half of the segment. What was interesting now, and I don't know if you are a boxing fan, Conor McGregor was involved. MMA, sorry, yeah. Not boxing, yeah. So he posted on social media in support of the march, and a lot of people think that he is one of the very recognizable people who are, in a sense, drawing crowds.
Yeah.
He can draw crowds. And he recently went to the White House. Let me show you before we talk about the White House.
Just quickly hover over Conor McGregor and see how many followers he's got on Twitter.
I think it's 10.8 million. Yeah, 10.7.
So more than twice the entire population of Ireland.
Yes.
Yeah, he's one of the biggest Irish personalities. Yeah. Big time.
Also, politics is to a very large extent about recognizability and brand. So he definitely has a brand. Now, whether he could be prime minister or not, that's another question. Right. So he has started making leader appearances. In a way, and he makes leader posts. So he says here, Ireland is too switched on and aware now to be overrun like some of our neighboring countries already have. I don't know if that's any kind of poking to someone. I don't know. It won't happen. Historical collective trauma to thank. Thank you, our 1916's heroes forever. And he says this is a marathon, not a sprint. And he's talking about here the thousands of people that went to the march. Right. Here he is at the White House with Trump talking about the Gulf of America thing. I don't know if he... And there was a video where he exited the White House in the way that Vince McMahon goes out in the meme where he's walking like that. And he sees.
Well, Conor McGregor always had that swagger when he walked into that, like a ridiculously exaggerated swagger, but...
Yes.
Yeah.
Right. So here, and he says that essentially... what the Irish should do is follow Trump's example. Trump puts America first. Why not put Ireland first? And says the same way that they are going about it more forcefully than others, Ireland should follow. And he's here at the White House, is saying Europe could use a lesson from President Trump and deport illegal migrants, especially those who refuse to assimilate. Too many anti-European countries to conquer, not join in peaceful unity. So he is, in a sense, poking Europeans. That's what I meant before. I said that they're constantly trying to say, everyone says we guys are not going to be conquered, but all of our neighbors have been conquered. It's a sort of a trope I see lately. I don't know if you see it as well.
Yeah. I mean, one thing I say about Conor McGregor is I completely agree. I said this on Twitter. I completely agree with him on this stuff. Yeah. Of course, 100%. But I don't like the man.
Okay, yeah.
All sorts of dodgy things he's done. There's a long list. There's a laundry list.
Yes, I've heard about things, but I'm not expressing support or pro or against. I'm reporting the incidents.
Yeah, no, sure.
As they happen because he was heavily involved into it. And but there's also another question with respect to who comes into the fore. And also there's a issue of allegations, because I've heard lots of allegations about him, but I don't know if they're true or not, or if they have been proven in court. So generally speaking, I like to avoid things like that if they haven't been proven in court. But you know more about MMA than I do. I don't know if it's...
Well, there was the rape stuff. Are we not supposed to say that word, are we? Might have to bleep that out in post.
Maybe, yeah.
But the sexual assault things, I think that went through a civil case. So, and I think I'm pretty sure he was found guilty. But so there's that. But there's just a load of other things. Like one time, he owns a whiskey distributor. I think he owns a pub as well. One time there was a guy in a pub who sort of old dude, who refused to have a bit of Conor's whiskey. Okay. So Conor punched him in the face.
That's not nice.
Not a hard punch.
If it happened that way, that's not nice.
It wasn't a hard punch at all. It was a little jab. But still, who does that?
Yeah.
There was another time he threw like a dolly, a wheelie dolly into a a coach and it broke the glass and a couple of people got injured. One guy got a bit of glass in his eye. Another time, at MMA now, they have
this is inside the knowledge you possess. I don't, but
it's this often
there are dodgy.
It's sponsored by Monster. Now have Monster cans on the table, and they're always empty now.
Yes,
because one time a few years ago, Conor started throwing them around. At his opponents, and they missed them and hit normal people in the crowd. And there's just a number of
that's not entirely civil. Let's put it this way.
Yeah, he's a loose cannon.
Yeah,
he's a loose cannon, but he's an MMA fighter. They're all going to be loose cannons.
Yeah, but also he's getting much advertisement by Trump, because if he's close to Trump, it kind of looks like he gets the Trump endorsement. And this matters, especially on social media and in politics. And especially when Trump is representing, whether allegedly or not, that's another matter. But if Trump is representing another paradigm, a paradigm that is different to the European paradigm, Conor McGregor at the White House means that, in a way, Trump wants Conor McGregor to be advertised.
Sure.
And also, Tucker Carlson wanted him advertised, and there's an episode of Conor McGregor at Tucker Carlson's, and they're talking about erasure of identity, and I have here some talking points. He says, he makes some good points. So he says, for instance, that we should continue to highlight the wrongdoings of the government, and he constantly hears Irish people saying that the establishment is constantly full of people who are thinking about their own careers, their own CVs, their own positions in supranational organizations, and in order to go forward to take place in those positions, they just constantly say their piece about foreign affairs. They constantly talk about minorities. They constantly talk about foreign conflicts. At the end of the day, people ask, what about us?
Yeah,
it's the same way somehow with men in the Western world. We're constantly bombarded with a message that we should constantly thinking about, the criminals, those who are not law abiding, or X, Y, and Z minorities. It's just okay. Who's gonna think about me?
And I couldn't agree with him more. Like I say, I don't particularly like Conor McGregor as just a human being. I think he's exposed himself as not a particularly nice person. But regardless of that, this stuff, is just exactly right. And I couldn't agree with him more. And so you don't have to like people in order to agree, like them personally.
Yes.
I wouldn't want to go for a drink or a meal with Conor McGregor. Not that he'd want to go with me, but
probably
that's not the point.
Would he try to punch you or something?
Yeah. But you don't have to like people in order to agree with their politics.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. So. Here we have the Taoiseach of Ireland, Michael Martin, saying that he isn't particularly nervous about the tens of thousands of protesters and the size. And he said that we recently had general elections. They had general elections in December 2024, and said we won the vote. I want to say one thing about the issue with voting and mass migration, because in voting, we vote and people vote every 4 or 5 years, it depends on the country, about overall agendas. But if both parties agree on some policies, that doesn't mean that people agree on it. And that it doesn't mean that people consent of it. Because what happens is that we are presented more often than not with two parties, perhaps a bit more sometimes, who have different overall agendas, and people don't vote on what they find better as an overall agenda. But both parties seem to have opted for the EU Migration Pact, which the Irish Parliament voted a few months ago.
Yeah, so it's a sneaky trick to say, we had a vote, and now we've got a mandate, and the people have spoken.
Yes.
It's like, no, they actually weren't allowed to pick
not
what
on
they
this
really
thing.
wanted. Yeah.
Not on this particular thing. Right. That we shouldn't allow them to get away with it. Right. So when it comes to the wider context, I want to say really briefly, because I think it's important, and a lot of people don't read about Ireland, and Ireland, I think, is a bit further ahead with respect to woke erasure of culture. I think the woke onslaught there has been incredibly strong and still goes strong. It hasn't gone away in a sense. So they have, I'll just mention four factors. They had a very discussion about a very severe hate speech law, Criminal Justice Bill 2022. I have interviewed Dr. David Thunder about this. That was, I think, about 2 years ago. Definitely check it out on our website. Also, you can subscribe with £5 a month, at least £5 a month, and get access to all our premium content and enjoy our lovely series such as Bo's Epochs.
A few hundred hours of history-themed content there alone.
Exactly. Right. So they also had the Irish referendums in March 8th last year, and they tried to do something incredibly sneaky. In both referendums, they lost. They had the family referendum and the care referendum. And what they wanted to do was to do the following. They wanted to change the definition of the family within the Irish Constitution. And they wanted to use it in order to expand another definition when it comes to financial support. Why? Because the Irish Constitution says that mothers who have children, by definition, they shouldn't be forced to work. They should have financial help. So what they wanted to do, they had two referendums for the following questions. Number one, they wanted to change the definition of the family from a biological family, a traditional family, to involve and include durable relationships, which were incredibly vaguely defined. I mean, if you talk about durable relationships, almost anything could count as a family. And change the other bit that says that not just mothers, but any member of the family should be liable for financial support. So I think if we bear in mind what the Irish government tried to do, they tried to basically change the definition of the family and who gets support in order to arbitrarily decide who merits financial support. So they could say, we have lots of people who are illegal foreigners. They have durable relationships outside of Ireland. Let's bring them here, and also let's fund them because we need to fund members of durable relationships, which are called families. The Irish rejected both of them overwhelmingly.
Good. Yeah. I mean, it's crazy. I think in Ireland, it's even more clear than in places like England or Germany or France or Sweden or whatever. It's even more clear that it's this phony, fake thing imposed from above.
Yeah.
Like you're trying to redefine the family in Ireland. In Ireland.
Yeah.
Right. Historically very Catholic.
Yeah.
Historically very traditional. Historically very sort of nationalist.
Yeah.
You're trying to do it to Ireland.
Yeah. And you had people like Leo Varadkar, the previous PM, and Helen McEntee, who was she was pushing the hate speech law like a Terminator. Yeah, she just wouldn't, and they rejected the really bad clause, and she said, I'm going to keep campaigning for it. And a day before the referendum, the double referendum, she was saying, these people who vote against don't express our Ireland. So the question is, who does we refer to?
Yeah, who are you
what does
talking
our
about?
refer to? And we did a really good segment last March about it. Definitely check it out. And we also have in Ireland the EU Migration and Asylum Pact. It's the same thing the EU is using in order to punish Viktor Orban and people who are skeptical about the relocation and scattering of illegal migrants. They voted for it. That's why we constantly see lots of Irish villages and lots of places in Ireland where you may have a village of 120 Irish peasants, and suddenly you have 300 people. If it sounded bad, I retract it.
I couldn't help but smirk.
Okay, sorry. I retract it.
That's fine.
You have 120 people and you have 200, 300 illegal migrants being bussed there, completely changing the nature of the landscape and the city. And also the housing crisis affair. This is definitely causing a massive strain on the housing market. it makes things much worse for the Irish. So,
I mean, as much as I said I don't particularly like Conor McGregor, I would still love it if he made his own party. Love it if he made his own party and bloody won.
Okay.
That would be so cool.
Okay, yeah.
And he actually started governing the country in the interests of the people of Ireland and reversed migration trends and all that sort of thing. It would be pretty amazing. It would be really amazing.
It would be fun to watch. I don't know if it would help or not, because I'm thinking that sometimes things do well on social media and don't necessarily do well in real life politics. This could be a good social media campaign. I don't know if it would work in actual politics. On the other hand, lots of people are telling me, well, how about the actual politicians? Are they working? No. They're not exactly putting a good name for themselves. They're making everything they can to ruin their reputation.
I think I'm right in saying, I don't think I'm going out on too much of a limb, that a lot of Irish people idolise Conor McGregor.
Okay.
I think he might do very well at a party led by him might do very well at the polls. I think it would. But you're quite right. Yeah. Things that do well or seem to be extremely popular on X in real life don't. At the ballot box in real life actually don't. So, but who knows?
But not just any person goes to the White House and have a press conference and also an interview with Carlson afterwards and being at the Oval Office. So perhaps
he's not just any person.
Yes. Yeah.
I've actually thrown a little bit of shade at his actual fighting career once or twice on Twitter. But to be completely fair, in his prime, he was special. I mean, holding a couple of different weight class championships, that's extremely, extremely rare. For a small window of time there, he probably won't fight again, I don't think. I think he's done. But for a window of time there, he was the best. Certainly in his weight classes, he was the best. I think it's probably fair to say he's the most famous Irishman in the world, right? I think that's fair. Who else is there?
Probably, yeah.
Who else is there? Who else?
Yeah, depends on the audience, I think. But yeah,
I can't think of a single other Irishman, full-blooded, proper, born in the Republic of Ireland Irishman, that's got more brand recognition than Conor McGregor.
Probably, yeah.
I mean, anyway.
And in a way, it's good that he backed this, because whatever the personal stuff, which I don't know, and I'm not qualified to talk about.
And he's a bit of a loose cannon. He's not exactly evil.
Okay.
He's a wild man, but that's what you've got to be an MMA dude. You've got to be a bit wild, and he is. But he's getting older now. He's actually chilled out a bit. You know, when you see him in interview, I've seen him in interview a few times where he's not being the Conor McGregor. he's been a normal person saying normal things, and he's perfectly reasonable. Right. He's a family man. He's married with kids and stuff. So.
Right. So I think that this was a massive protest, and I think it's not going to be the last, because although there were elections and there have been elections in other countries within the EU, lots of people are fed up with just mass migration being forced on them. And yes, a lot of the times we're having enough. Everyone has enough, but it actually creates more problems than the people who claim to be in favor of it think it does.
If you would like to watch the full uncut version that is also uncensored, head on over to lotuseaters.com to find out more.